Welcome to the Gradient Glow Pillow Crochet Along. I'm Linda Permann from One Big Happy Yarn Co., and we want to be your yarn shop no matter where you live. Today we're going to work on this amazing pillow. The mesmerizing color shifts in the yarn make it really addictive and fun to crochet because it's always fun to see what color is going to be next. We'll go over the yarn you'll need, we'll talk about how to get started with an adjustable ring, then I'll show you how to change colors seamlessly and check your gauge as you go. Remember, you can go to onebighappy.com to get a kit with a printed pattern and all the yarn you need. Let's get started. So let's take a look at what we'll be making. So this is the pillow. It actually starts in the center and you're gonna alternate colors of yarn every round. So we start here and we're working in the round outward. The fun twist is that when you actually put it on the form, you twist it so that the corners meet in the middle, and then I'll show you this really cool way to seam these edges together kind of seamlessly to create this X design. So it's really up to you whether you like this side, which I think of as the back, but you could display as the front, or if you like this side. What's really fun about the yarn we're using for this pillow is that it has both a marl and a slow gradient fade. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at that. So here are the two colors I used on that pillow, and you can see that they're largely monochromatic, meaning it's just the same color all the way through, but that there's a lot of contrast between these two, and that's what makes the design so compelling. So that's one way that you can match colors. We also have another kit that has these two colors, and this is more panchromatic, so the colors change from blue to orange, which gives you a totally different effect. So this is Cascade Wave yarn, and it has this really long color change effect, and then it also has this cool marl. So that's when two plies or maybe more than two plies are twisted together with a different color in each ply. So you get this really cool effect that starts to happen as you keep crocheting, and it's really fun to see even on a yarn like this that doesn't appear at a glance to have a lot of color change. It's really fun to see what happens as the two yarns interact. And on our website at onebighappy.com, we've put together 5 different color kits for you so you can decide which one you want to try. So let me show you a couple of the other options we have for you. This one is a fun like blue, green, and purple pairing. So they're already paired on our site as a kit. We've taken all the guesswork out of it for you. And if you like purple, we also have this one that has a lighter purple and a darker purple. It's really fun to see where they sort of start to match and then they sort of start to contrast again. I really like that effect. And then if you're a little bit more traditional in your decor, we also have this one that's got like a nice blue and brown that goes with a lot of traditional decor. One other thing to keep in mind when you start this pillow is that even if you buy the same yarn as your friend, your pillow might look completely different based on where you start. So if we look at these two yarns in the skein, I could choose to start in the middle of this skein, or I could choose to start from the outside edge, depending on what effect I want in the pillow. And so it's, you could just start wherever the middle is, but it's just something to keep in mind if you wanted to have like a vibrant center to your pillow. When I made my version, I started with what was actually a red in the center versus doing the more matchy blue. So as you get started, you can just play with that and have fun with that. I think that's what makes it a really fun, addictive little project. I actually had to crochet 2 of them, and it was hard to stop after that because it was just really fun to see what happens. Let's take a look at some of the supplies I'll be using throughout the video. We're going to be working with a size 7 crochet hook. This is the Clover Soft Touch brand. It's my personal favorite, but anything that's the 4.5 millimeter size will work, or anything that allows you to get gauge. We'll also be using some stitch markers to keep our place. I like the kind that doesn't actually lock, just because we'll be taking them in and out all the time. We're going to use a bent tip tapestry needle from Clover. I also have these really cute rainbow folding scissors. They come in this adorable case and they're just fun to work with. I have a fox measuring tape that we'll use to measure our pillow when we block it. And I also have our sock check tool, which is for more than just socks. It actually is a great gauge, and it's also just a nice rigid ruler to have as you're working. I have these knit clips. These are what we're going to use when we sew our pillow together at the end. They hold your knitting or your crochet together without piercing it. And then when we block, we'll use these Mindful Knit blockers. I absolutely love these. They just make blocking really easy. And then I also have the blocking mats from Mindful. And a pattern wallet is another good tip for you to have if you want to keep all your stuff organized. So this is a pattern wallet that's called the Blossom pattern wallet. Our patterns fit perfectly inside and it just helps you keep your place. You can take a magnet and just move it along as you go so that you know where you're at. And then when you're done for the night, you can just close it up and have everything you need right there with you when you're ready to start crocheting again. So let's start by taking a look at the pattern. The printed pattern comes in our kit and it has directions that are both written and diagrams. So if you prefer to work from a diagram, you can definitely look at the diagram in the pattern and follow that. It's just the same instructions that are written, just a different way. So if you have any questions about specifics, what round is this, how many stitches should I have, definitely always reference the pattern as your source of truth in this crochet along. Now let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start with a magic ring. You want to pick whichever color you want to start with. It's really up to you. You're going to get a little bit of a different effect depending how you start, but you can always change if you don't like where it's going. So I'm going to start with this orange color, and then I start the magic ring by just putting the yarn in my hand the way I always do. So I loop it over my pinky and then behind my index finger and have a nice long tail here. I wrap it around my thumb to create a loop, like so, just cross right here. And then I just go in the ring, pull a loop through, and that's my magic ring. Now I'm going to go ahead and chain one. So just yarn over and pull it through. And now we'll single crochet once in the ring. Then we're going to chain two, and we're going to repeat that whole thing again. So single crochet, chain two, single crochet, chain two, and now we just have one more to do. So we single crochet, and then instead of doing a chain two at the end of the round, let's take a look at what we've got. We've got this almost square. And if we chain two, we're going to end up joining in the first single crochet and we'll have our hook be there. But I like to end in the middle of that chain two space so that you don't have to do all this slip stitching to get to where you want to be every time you start a round. So instead of chaining two, we're going to chain one, and then we're going to single crochet in the very first single crochet of the round. And I'll show you what that does. So when you do that, you end up in the corner instead of just to the left of the corner. So that's why we do the single crochet. I've designed it that way so that you end up in the corner. But the other catch is that we're changing colors every round. So we also need to change colors for the next round. And we do that in this joining single crochet. So I'm going to pull it out. I still have my chain one. And when you change colors, you always want to change colors in the last yarn over of the last stitch of the old color, so that the way the stitch lays, that loop lays down on top of the next stitch. So I'm going to start my single crochet with the orange yarn still. I'm going to yarn over, pull it through. I have my two loops. Now I'm ready to finish the single crochet. I'm going to grab the other color of yarn and get it ready to go. So I have it in my hands the way I like, around my pinky and then behind my index finger, leaving a long tail. And I'm going to finish that single crochet with a yarn over in the new color. And then I go ahead and chain one right now because it's the next thing I'm going to do before I straighten all this out. So now I'm just going to tug and make sure to pull my center ring tight. And let's take a look at what we've got here. We've got essentially four corners. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And even though this first corner is a chain one single crochet, it counts as a chain two space. It's all going to make a lot more sense once you have a few rounds going, but that's how to change colors seamlessly, and we'll do it a couple more times so you get the hang of it. So now I'm going to single crochet in the space right beneath it. If you need to pull your work apart to see that space, it's totally fine to do. So I'm just going to insert my hook and make a single crochet here, chain one, and then we're going to skip the single crochet and go right into the next corner. We'll do single crochet, chain two, single crochet, and then we'll chain one and skip this next single crochet. In the next corner we'll do single crochet, chain two, single crochet, chain one, skip that next single crochet, single crochet, chain two, single crochet, and then chain one. And now we're back to that first corner, so we'll do our single crochet, and then instead of the chain two, we're going to chain one, and then we're going to single crochet in the first one to join. But after we've done our yarn over, we drop this yarn and we're going to switch back to the first yarn we used. So we'll complete the single crochet with that yarn over in the new color, and then chain one. And you can see here we've got our 4 little corners and we're ready to start the next round. So I'm going to work one more round for you and show you how you can set up some stitch markers to keep track of your place. But this is the gist of the pattern. It's pretty simple. So I'm going to go right in this space here. This part can get confusing. I feel like this was actually the hardest part of the pattern, but otherwise really simple. It's fine to pull apart your stitches if you need to see. You want to go in this big hole right here. You don't want to go in the single crochet, and you don't want to go in this chain space. You just want to go just to the right of it. So then just draw up your loop and single crochet, and then we'll chain one. We're skipping the single crochet. We're single crocheting in the chain one space. And let me just get that out of the way. Chain one, and then now we're back at a corner. So we're going to single crochet, chain two, single crochet, and I'm going to go ahead and put a stitch marker in this corner. It's just like a mental sticky note that's telling me that's a corner, you're doing something different here. Because as you get going, there's a real repetition to this pattern, and it helps you see the corners if you're a little newer to crochet to mark them. It's optional, you don't have to, but I find it helps me kind of stop me to say, hey, you're doing something different here. Okay, now back to getting into your crochet. So we're going to chain one, skip the single crochet in the next chain space, chain one, we're skipping that single crochet, and now we're back to a corner. So single crochet, chain two, oops, and then we'll chain one, single crochet, chain one. Now we're back in it. Oh, we should mark this corner too, just so we know that's a corner. And we'll do single crochet, chain two, single crochet, chain one. So you're always, when you're at the sides, you're always chaining one for every single crochet you see, and then you're single crocheting for every chain one space you see. So you're just kind of alternating the stitches and the spaces. It's kind of like a granny square, just different stitches that we're using. So we're back to this corner, so we don't chain two, we actually only chain one, and we're going to single crochet to join in this round. So again, we insert our hook, draw up a loop, and then we drop the yarn that we're working with and pick up the contrast color. And we complete the stitch with that. And then I always just go ahead and chain one right there, just so it's there, so I can tidy up by tugging on the other color. So now that we have that, I'm going to go ahead and mark these other 2 corners. And that way you know when you get to them that you're in a corner. So every corner is single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, except for that first corner with the join. Let's work one more round in the pattern just so you get the hang of it, and then I'm going to show you some little tricks for keeping track of where you are and checking your work along the way. So I'm going to go ahead and work my first single crochet in this corner, chain 1, and now we've got a couple of single crochets along the side. But again, every time we see a single crochet, we're chaining 1 and then single crocheting in the next space, just doing the opposite of whatever the row is beneath there. And this creates a really interesting effect that kind of looks like brioche or mosaic crochet without having to do that work of actually going into the row below. So I really enjoy the effect. So when you get to the corner, take out the stitch marker, go ahead and do your corner. So single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. And then you can just move the marker up as you go. So now we're working this next side, chain 1, single crochet in the space, chain 1, single crochet in the space, and we're getting to the next corner. So we chain 1 before, and then we do the same thing of single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and then you can just move this marker on up into that corner. So I'm going to show you one thing to watch out for when you're crocheting. It's really easy to accidentally put your hook in the wrong place. So when you're working a single crochet into the chain one space, let's just take a look at what's happening. If I stretch this out, there's this big hole, and that's where you want to go. And then there's this little strand that is actually part of the single crochet. That's part of the next single crochet. So if you go in here and you tug, you can see that that's all connected. You actually want to go just to the right of that when you insert your hook, like so. It's not a huge deal, but when you go into the single crochet accidentally, your work will start to sway and you won't get that graphic kind of stripe effect that we're going for. So if it happens once, it's not a big deal, but I think just knowing where to go is going to help you avoid having that happen to you. I'm telling you because it happened to me, so it's not the end of the world. Most people aren't going to look at your pillow as closely as you are while you're working it, but just one thing to keep in mind. I want you to just be aware that you're not going into the chain, you're not going into the single crochet, you're going into this hole that's right under it. So it should just feel nice and easy to slide your hook through if you're doing it right. So just kind of pay attention to that as you crochet. So I have a piece that I've already worked 9 rounds of, which is the size that you need to make your gauge swatch. And I just want to show you how it's shaping up. So here's the center, and each round that you work just adds another color. And you get this cool kind of graphic effect that's happening at the corners. One thing, a little tip for keeping track of your place as you go, is that every round that you do is going to add 4 stitches to each side. But that's kind of a lot to remember. An even better thing to remember is that the number of the round you're on, like if you're on round 9, you should have that many single crochet along a single edge. So let's check that out. So if I start in the corner 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 single crochet and I'm on round 9. Another easy way to count the rows you're on is to find the center, which is kind of this easiest thing. And then if you look at this first L shape, that's 2, so 1, 2, and then you can just jump to that color again. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. So that's just something helpful as you're going. It's just really easy visually to see what round you're on. I wrote this pattern in such a way that you can always add a couple extra rounds if you need to get the size, but I like to be able to count the rounds to see how far I am because I don't like to get off of the couch to measure things. So that's just a little tip as you're going. The gauge is written for 9 rounds, so that's where you want to stop and measure. And I have a swatch here that's already blocked. Now, in the pattern, the gauge is listed as 9 rounds, measures 4 inches. But in reality, my swatch is a little bit smaller. And the reason is that the gauge in a pattern is always taken from the finished item, which is kind of hard when you're trying to check your gauge with a small swatch. So take it with a grain of salt. I'm going to show you the actual measurements of my swatch and then give you some tips for like how to know if you're on track. So I have here our sock check tool, which is actually just a great rigid tool to measure your gauge as well. And it has this 4-inch opening so that you can easily see 4 inches. And I've blocked my swatch, but it shrunk up a bit once I let it dry. So what it's really measuring here is more like 3 1/4 inches. But if I take out my finished pillow, which is where the gauge is actually measured, and I put the 2 right in the middle, and then I count, actually, let's see, I'm gonna rotate this so that I can, it's kind of hard to keep track of rounds, but if I think of 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, so 9 is the red round, then it's right at 4 inches when I count across. And that's because when the fabric is a bigger piece, it's going to stretch more easily. But as a pattern designer, you always want to take the gauge from the finished piece because that's what you're guaranteed to be able to make it the same size. So what does that mean for you? What that means is when you're blocking your swatch, like if you take the time to block it, as long as it's going to comfortably stretch to 4 inches, like easy, right? I'm not grabbing it and tugging it, then you're fine. Like I pinned it out to 4 inches and it looked good. Or if you just want to think of your swatch actually measuring 3 3/4 inches not blocked, that's probably fine too, because this is my unblocked swatch and there's not a lot of difference now that the block swatch has actually dried. So kind of a funny thing about gauge. I think gauge is always a little bit tricky, but grain of salt, if you're somewhere in the 3 3/4 to 4 inches range for your gauge, you should be fine. If you don't have that gauge, or if you're way off on gauge, if you have too many rounds, that actually means that each round is too small, so you need to move up to a bigger size hook. If you have too few rounds, so your piece is a lot bigger than 4 inches, then you need to move down to a smaller hook to make them smaller to fit in the 4 inches. And that's just important so that you don't run out of yarn when you're making the pillow. It's not that big of a deal. There's a lot of yarn left over when you make the pillow. But if you wanted to try to make 2 pillows, you want to get gauge, because you can actually just add 2 skeins of yarn onto the kit to make 2 pillows, assuming that you have gauge. So once you've got your gauge all measured and you're on track, you're just going to keep crocheting in pattern. It's really the same thing, and you're just making a really big square. One thing that you're going to come across is at some point you're going to run out of your first skein of yarn and you're going to want to change colors. So there's just a thought process there that you want to think about. You can just pick up the next color willy-nilly and keep going, or you might want to try to match in your second skein where you are to continue the color flow. So pretend that I was done with this skein of yarn and this is the color I have left. I just might want to look and say, okay, this end matches more closely, but if I, let's say this was where I was at, right? It's going to make a color shift. So you may want to decide to either work one round completely versus just bringing in the new strand wherever it falls, or you might be fine with just keeping it the way it is. It's up to you. Don't overthink it too much, but it's just depending on how particular you are, you might want to try to match the yarn. And if the yarn doesn't match, or there's not an easy in on one of the ends, you just may want to complete one full round in the old skein, even if it means ripping back, so that you can start the new color without having a change in the middle of the round. Completely up to you. One other note, one thing that happens as your square gets bigger that you may see and might worry you, and I just want to show you that it's fine, is that it's just natural in crochet to get this little bit of twisting as you go around. So, this isn't quite as straight as you might want it to be. You might get just a little bit of ripple. As long as you're keeping consistent edges, you have the same number on each side, it matches the number of the round you're on, you're fine. That's all going to block right out, and you haven't done anything wrong. So I just wanted to make you aware of that the blocking is going to solve any of this kind of sway that happens. It's totally normal. It's just a bias that happens when you work in the round without flipping back and forth in crochet. Next time I'm going to show you how to finish off your square, and then we'll block this and do that super satisfying mattress stitch seam. If you have any questions along the way, be sure to check out our Facebook group, the One Big Happy Makers. You can ask questions there or in the comments below. Remember, if you still need a kit, you can go to onebighappy.com to get a kit with all the yarn you need and the printed pattern. Last but not least, be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss a stitch. Happy crocheting!